We're just setting up right now with the last panel. It's going to talk about DAOs. DAOs, they're not the biggest subjects right now at this point. The metaverse and NFTs have kind of taken front row center. But DAOs serve an incredibly important place in the entire ecosystem. Blockchain and crypto projects for me are about community, building communities, collaborating with people, and having an incentive machine to encourage participation. DAOs are an excellent way to achieve them, but they're highly complicated. There's all kinds of regulatory things from the centralized world that you actually do have to incorporate if you're going to do it properly. I don't know if properly is the right word. For one of my projects called the Effect Network, we have a DAO with an incredibly huge smart contract stack to actually make that whole thing happen, where we incentivize people to make proposals and do these types of things. So the panel that'll be coming up here in the next couple of minutes are going to cover a whole bunch of subjects of exactly that, of how DAOs are going to work in the Web3 space. And that's the deal. So please put your hands together for our panelist and moderator about DAOs.
Hi everyone, welcome to the last panel of this conference, and we obviously saved the best for last. My name is Anne, I'm an early crypto investor and a journalist. I have a crypto podcast, but today is not about me, it's about these amazing guys. We talk about DAOs, and for everyone who doesn't know what DAO stands for, it's Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And what that means is, like with everything in crypto, there's no government control, like everybody in the network or everybody in the DAO is in control. There's no, like nobody else controls it and everybody has voting rights and no one person owns the entire thing. But to understand the ideology of DAOs and also get some use cases, we have these amazing panelists. We have Nick, who is the founder of BlackChip DAO. And then we have Gil, who is the founder of Axe Labs. And we have Brown Rick, who is a DAO experience designer, which we will hear more what that is later on. I want to start with you, Nick, because you're the founder of a fully VC and angel-funded DAO project. Give us an idea. What are DAOs? Why do they exist? What's basically the idea behind it?
Sure. Thank you, Ann. So, hi guys. I'm Nick Beato. I'm the founder of BlackChip. Very simply, BlackChip is a collectible-focused DAO that aims to acquire some of the most coveted collectibles in the world, and they could range from rare artwork, wine, whiskey, classic cars, memorabilia, and NFTs. And historically, these assets have only been available to ultra-wealthy individuals and high-net-worth individuals. But BlackChip aims to change that by allowing investors and enthusiasts from all over the world the ability to collectively own these assets. But moreover, when we talk about DAOs, very simply, they are member-managed communities with no centralized authority, and that's what Ann was alluding to. They're a safe place where strangers from all over the world, all walks of life, can meet equal strangers that are very like-minded and fund community projects. And so what DAOs really do is, and I think it's important to really understand how we got here, the transition from centralized organizations to decentralized organizations, which are built on a completely new framework of independence, ownership, and responsibility. And so when we think about that, we need to think about essentially how this world of the trust or lack of came about. And I think when we look at big organizations in this world, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Googles, they monetize almost every piece of Web 2.0. We use their products every single day, but we don't really have a voice. And oftentimes, their decision makers make their decisions based on very microeconomic variables and often just to incentivize themselves. So what DAOs provide is the ability to, and I want to add this philosophical component here. When I was growing up, Bitcoin was in its infancy, and no one really knew about it, no one talked about it. So what I was taught is that the way you grew up, what you were taught shapes how you view the world. I was taught that a traditional business hierarchy was the CEO making all the decisions. But now, through Bitcoin, shows the world that decentralized systems can maintain consensus at scale if given the right incentives. And that's exactly what DAOs are. DAOs have the ability to bring together complete strangers to fund projects in a completely decentralized way. And I know some people like to make some comments about how it can be very difficult, because it is. You have 10,000 opinions opposed to a handful. But I believe that this ecosystem across multiple blockchains, and Bitcoin kind of pushed us into this revolution, is that you've seen so much creativity, so much individualism, and that's so many cross-border communities. And you have people that are kind of building these things together. And if we can kind of harness that and understand that this revolution is based on this decentralized process and these decentralized organizations of the future, and we're moving businesses from off-chain to on-chain, I think we could really sustain this for better ecosystems in the digital space and in the real world.
So I get the idea, like in theory, it sounds amazing. Everybody has the same rights, everybody can vote, there's no hierarchies. But I lived in London during the Brexit vote. I lived in the United States when Trump got elected. And I feel like a lot of times people can be manipulated, and sometimes they would vote for something that they think is best for themselves and not necessarily best for the community. And they tend to not see the bigger picture. And that's what I want to ask you, Gil.
Wow.
Because you've been involved in a lot of DAO projects. Do you see an issue here? And if so, do you see any ways to solve that?
Difficult question, yeah. By the way, I'm Gil, like I'm ex-labs, I'm an engineer, kind of boring, I know, but I try to get like the space in a pragmatic way. Yeah, I'm with Neo for quite some time, Neo blockchain. But answer your question, and yes, how I see DAOs and how I see like this decentralization going forward is in a hybrid way. So because decentralization is super nice. I personally, I just started with Bitcoin like in 2013, 14. I really believe on this movement, let's say. But what I see in the DAOs is that there's always some incentives and like some that you cannot predict, some actions from stakeholders that you cannot model and you cannot put in code, because in the end, who interacts with the DAOs are humans, people around. And yeah, what I believe is a hybrid approach. Instead of going fully decentralized from day one, why don't you have kind of different models of governance attached to DAOs? For example, I'm just building, for example, grant shares, which is also a DAO in the new ecosystem, and it's a grants program. I'm gonna talk a bit later about this, but there we decided to instead of creating a token from day one, what about having a set of members in this DAO which can make decisions first to model it, and then like at a later stage you could add different layers, you know, in this organization that giving the decision power also to others. And then you can kind of, with a hybrid approach with different layers, you can, how can I say, remediate some of the problems of full decentralization or full centralization. So you can go into small steps. So that's what I believe. Sometimes just people come to me and say, Gil, look, no. It's, let's go full decentralized. It's a DAO or it's not a DAO? You know, so then it's not decentralized. But, you know, you have different kinds of point of views on this. And that's my opinion. But, I mean, I'm talking a bit more in the pragmatic point of view in the DAOs that I know. But and if you put this into society, in like having maybe Twitter as a DAO, where people can vote if Trump, who have a voice or not, Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's difficult. You need, in my opinion, hybrid models to model that.
So that's actually a good way to bring in Brownrigg, your DAO experience designer, you call that?
Yeah, that's the running title.
So you're basically looking at the human aspects of DAOs. And my question would be, so if you have individuals, people are different, people have different skill sets, different time, different goals. How do you bring people together in a thing where everybody's supposed to be the same, has the same rights, and is supposed to be treated equally?
I think what drives human motivation is the change that we seek to make in the world. And I think when we can align people on a specific change, that's when forward motion happens. When you align trust and tension within the same equation, you can start getting people to move in a direction together that wasn't possible before. And I think what's very interesting about the whole DAO movement is that we can use the power of decentralization, that each person has their own motivations, each person has their own outlook, each person has their own qualities that we can bring together to create a new kind of change that wasn't possible before. I like to say that DAOs don't exist to be decentralized. DAOs exist to create change. And when we align people on a change and we use the power of Web3 and the tools that we now have available, and we can organize them in a human way to create meaningful experiences for the people that come into these communities, that's when we can create something truly meaningful. And relying on tech stack and tools and DAO tooling right now, it's like telling a business owner, a brand new business owner who doesn't know anything, just download QuickBooks and that'll solve all your problems. It's a tool for your business. Download it and yeah, it'll fix your problems. And that's kind of the narrative that's going around right now that I'm trying to debunk essentially and say, no, let's look at what jobs need to get done for the humans in these organizations. First, create a safety layer, then create a belonging layer, and then we can figure out how to do the thing that we want to do together.
So I want to actually hear your take on this, because you're the traditional DAO person, and now we have two people saying DAO should not be decentralized. What do you say to that?
I agree with both Brownrigg and Gil. They have great points. So yes, you have to create meaningful experiences. You're also kind of gathering a ton of people together, and it's incredibly difficult to keep every DAO on chain and be completely decentralized. And I know, speaking from experience, BlackShip, when you're dealing with physical items, there has to be, especially expensive ones, there has to be some layer where somebody does some sort of negotiating. Somebody has to do some sort of logistics when it comes to insurance and warehousing. And somebody also has to make the actual physical acquisitions, because not everybody accepts Ethereum nowadays. So you have to remember that there has to be some layer of trust. And I know we kind of harp on this ideology that DAOs are completely decentralized and they're completely trustless, and that's not the case. You have to trust some aspect, because smart contracts can only do so much. And to Brownrigg's point, so I completely agree with Gil that all DAOs aren't completely decentralized, and BlackShip is no different. But for Brownrigg, it's absolutely true. You're gathering thousands of people, but there isn't a proper way to move people with legitimate skills that add value in one area and harness those skills along with some other value that other people bring and kind of group them together so you're kind of operating like a legitimate decentralized company. And I think that's incredibly sustainable if we can figure that out. It's just that it's one of those features that it's incredibly hard to figure out the skill set of 10,000 people and put them to use. But when that time comes, I think DAOs will become mainstream, and we'll see some really functioning businesses operating throughout a DAO.
Yeah, I just want you to add something on this. I don't know if you guys agree with me that it's pretty hard these days on DAOs to get proof of participation. I mean, how you guys are going to bootstrap a DAO? Like that's why you have so many airdrops. And if you bought that NFT or if you bought that, you're gonna I'm gonna airdrop like tokens or decision power to the others. And I mean, this is what I see in the ecosystem is, for example, Discord is being used as a way of, if you comment more, if you participate more, you probably get more tokens, and then you have more decision power in it. And this is a difficult problem. This is like the proof of participation, and it's very hard to measure this.
I think it goes beyond proof of participation.
Yeah.
I think it's like telling a student, for you to learn, I'm going to pay you money. That only goes so far. You know, what really drives engagement in an experience, and so just a little bit of context, I'm on the core team of PubDAO, which is a DAO that is being spun up by Decrypt that just recently finished its first round of funding to remove itself from consensus. And so we're actively in this experimentation mode of like, how do we actually make the thing work? Like, how do we create incentives like when we don't have a token, and that's being worked out. And so what we devised was a way to use the sensation of belonging and design that into the DAO specifically. So PubDAO is about bringing together writers, trying to create a decentralized way of doing journalism again, to rebuild that trust. And so instead of just traditionally, you would have a writer that comes in, submits an article, it goes through the editor, and then it gets published or not published or whatever. Yep. We're like, what if we created a system, a pod system, where we invited passionate writers, yep, gave them the permission to be able to write what they want to write about, and within the subculture, make sure that they are aligned on values and having fun. So we wanted to create, this is not the vibes, you know, this goes beyond vibes and hype. This is, I'm coming here because I want a meaningful interaction with other people, and that drives participation. That drives meaningful participation sustainably. But
to create this notion of belonging, as you said, you need the right tooling for doing this, right? But in your point of view, like the tooling comes after, and the concepts of belonging comes first, because I mean, it's a kind of a deadlock, you know? You have to create the sense of belonging, but you have to, you need the tools for doing this.
You can spin up minimum viable tools in order to test that, right? And that's what's happening in the DAO space right now in terms of tooling, is that people are developing a lot of stuff, you know, putting things together. And I prescribe to the jobs theory that Clayton Christensen put together. And his idea is that each person has a job that they're looking to get done. And the responsibility of the person servicing that job, or company or whoever, is to understand why they're there, what other jobs they're competing against, create a solution, or hypothesis of a solution, test the solution, which is an emergent strategy process, and then create a deliberate strategy process to actually put resources forth and build a thing that's actually going to help them fulfill the task they're seeking to do. I mean, that's why we're going to see 80%, 90% of DAO tools disappear within the next 3 to 4 years, because they didn't do the due diligence of creating those tools that actually solve a problem for a specific DAO or a subset or vertical of DAO.
So what would you say, how should you structure a DAO then to solve this?
What I see DAOs as brains. So the biggest problem right now with DAOs is that they don't know what to do with all this ambiguous information and resources that are coming in, right? Because DAOs allow a lot of different inputs to come in. And what needs to happen is there needs to be a process that determines what these ambiguous resources are, how they can best serve the change or the North Star that the DAO is seeking to create, and then build a fluid process, just like the brain does with all the sensory information. It goes down, hits the amygdala, the limbic system, and then the limbic system figures out like, oh, I need to respond to that. Well, that's not actually such a big deal, but we'll put it on the back burner in case something comes up, right? As a DAO, we're literally trying to recreate the brain. It's in a simplified form. And so we have to understand why people are coming in, what they bring to the table, what change we're seeking to create. And then we can figure out how to actively govern one. But I think the core principles are safety. People coming in, do they know they're going to get screwed? You know, are they going to get spammed? Are they going to get rug pulled? And then after you have that layer down, then you can start building systems of belonging into the system to create the change. And so I don't think there's a one governance model that fits all. But once you have those elements down, you can start actually doing the thing that you want it to do.
But that would also mean you would have to have a person or multiple in charge who would structure all of that, no?
Yeah, but you can structure these processes in a way that make them decentralized over time. So yeah, you start off every DAO, successful DAO, even Constitution DAO, that made such a gold as headlines. They had a core team working hundreds of hours for weeks on end to try and negotiate deals with Sotheby's, et cetera, for them to create a decentralized platform that would then allow them to pitch for the Constitution. And so I don't think it's realistic to start off 100% decentralized. It's chaos. Imagine we're doing a live thing here now with the audience, and there's a cool things happening. No more rules. You have an app on your phone that gets to vote yes or no. Let's have the conference from now on. There's no errand, there's no organizers, there's no nothing. Let's create a meaningful experience for everyone in this conference and have it be completely decentralized.
I mean, that sounds ambitious, but again, you would have to have somebody even put this in place and put the voting system in place,
So,
right?
okay, here's my challenge. Sorry, I'm taking up so much of my time.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Here's my challenge. Figure out a way to create a DAO festival. That is an interesting challenge because, yeah, you do need groups of centralized people to create something, but imagine how fun it would be if we had the ability to vote on events as they happen live. Imagine the amount of interaction we would have if we were able to do that. I have a job that I'm looking to get done, and I want to learn XYZ thing. And I put up a proposal, and there's a system in place that lets everybody else know, so-and-so put up a proposal, let's go and do that thing together.
Yeah.
How much more interaction is there going to be if that system was put in place?
No, I mean, this is, how can I say, this is, as I said, I'm very pragmatic, I'm engineer, car engineer, and like in my world, you have like these inputs and outputs, and when you execute these inputs, you have some outputs which should be executed in a way which is guaranteed by a layer. Imagine that you have these proposals, like in a conference, to do an activity, but then in the real world, these proposals cannot be accepted somehow, or cannot be respected, let's say.
Unenforceable?
Unenforceable. So like this is, then you have like, you should have like another mechanism where, another mechanism that you put a stake to be part of this DAO, where you lose it if you don't respect, or if you just simply didn't give a...
You ghost them.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's one piece complements the other, and it's guys, it's kind of complex. I've been like in this space, building some DAOs, and like right now, as I said, we are building grant shares, which is a decentralized and transparent grant program in the Neo blockchain. And it's but I mean, it's a kind of, we're bootstrapping with a simple model where you have members and then you can create a proposal, and then the proposal will be endorsed by a member of this DAO, and then you can get funding for your project in the Neo blockchain ecosystem. But I mean, this is one of the examples, and it's kind of like self-contained in a way. But if you start adding components and features on DAOs, for example, imagine that we allow a third-party investors to put some money in this DAO, like to invest in projects, and then you need like the return for this. And so you need a lot of mechanisms, incentives, and this is very, very kind of complex. So before I was challenging about tools because it seems a deadlock for me. That at the same time you want to like create belonging, create like this decentralized society, there are some parts of the society that are not decentralized yet, that you cannot enforce, that is still centralized, and then you have to survive on it. You have to make it work. So like that's one of the main challenges that I've seen recently in DAOs, in the ecosystem, in my in my world. Where someone has to hold the domain name for a DAO. Which entity will hold the domain name? Or someone has to host in Google Cloud the infrastructure. who gonna do this? So you have to make it work somehow, and you have to create the tools, but with a goal, and with this in mind of creating the experience, with creating belonging, with creating this stuff around it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on this, my challenges.
It's creating community, incentivizing those people, and then creating meaningful relationships and feeling together and part of that community. That's what keeps people engaged, and that's what keeps people coming back. I think that's the biggest thing, is some DAOs are not all for profit. So some people aren't necessarily incentivized to stay there and participate. And people often forget that. But there are not-for-profits that operate perfectly fine, LLCs and trusts in the real world. And what keeps them coming back is the mission. And so that's where the entire meaningful relationship with people, with the community, with life itself, whatever their mission is, it has to continue in that way. Or if someone doesn't align with the mission, at least they're being incentivized to participate, because in a scenario like BlockChip, where we're basically operating as a digital hedge fund, your money is in play. So you're incentivized to participate, because otherwise you're just having this passive relationship with money, and then it could either go up or down depending on everybody else. And if you're in a non-for-profit, you hope that whatever mission you're trying to, whether it's planting trees or what have you, you're making sure that that's getting done, and you're making a small change in the community. So it's a very thin line depending on what the mission is. So there's no one trick pony that will kind of cover all of this. There's no tooling that satisfies every mission. So it's kind of like that imperfect, perfect balance between mission and person, like someone's, I guess what they want to get out of it. Why are they there to begin with?
Yeah, I want to ask you, Nick, because you are obviously a founder of a DAO. This whole what comes first, chicken or the egg conversation, what do you think? Like, do you need to have the structures in place first, or kind of like, let's get everyone together and then we figure it out after?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the hybrid model makes a lot of sense when we were discussing it. So when you look at it from like a chicken or an egg perspective, there has to be a centralized piece. There has to be either a very small group of people or one person that goes about and says, I want to create this mission. Let me get people around this and support this. And in some instances, you might have to create an LLC for your DAO. Like in the United States, Wyoming's a home for a lot of DAOs. Maybe you've heard of City DAO. And there's a lot of decentralized ones like Juicebox, where you're basically, somebody creates a protocol on Juicebox, and it gets funded that way. And there's no like real true legal structure. But then there's others when you're dealing in security. So it's one of those things where somebody has to do it. You can't create this perfect decentralized system where complete strangers come together and they're like, yeah, let's all pitch in to do this. There has to be somebody that takes the leap. And in one fashion or another, there's going to be some sort of centralization. So the hybrid model, I don't think, could ever go away if you want to keep the integrity of the DAO, in my opinion.
It comes back to what change are you seeking to make? And depending on the change that you're seeking to make and what's dependent on that change, we then reverse engineer what systems we need to put in place, how decentralized or not decentralized it is, which is why I think this whole conversation about DAOs need to be 100% decentralized, or you call yourself about you, it's meaningless.
Agreed.
Because as human beings, we're evolving, we're always changing, we're trying to make new things, and we're losing sight of the magic of what's possible with DAOs when we keep harping on this notion.
I think like law and regulation plays a huge piece as well, because you can create a lot of DAOs and never have any legal or oversight from the SEC or whatever governing body the DAO is formed in. But when you're dealing with investments, it can get incredibly sticky. But that's where the most incentivized projects live. So, and then in that sense, you can't create a perfectly decentralized investment platform, or at least in a DAO. You could definitely do it in DeFi, but
so like in BlockChip, you have like NFTs only, or you work with different kind of assets?
Yeah. So we do a variety, a broad range of blue chip collectibles, both physical and digital. So they could be rare artwork, wine, whiskey, memorabilia, or it could be NFTs. So they're all just ecosystems that people might want to participate in, but they just simply don't have the money to do so. And so like that's where, when you're dealing with things that people wouldn't normally be able to afford or participate in, that's where it can get, you're really incentivizing for some people.
I've got a question for you. So how have you thought through how you're going to decide what to do with the assets, like as a group?
As a group. So it's
Yeah.
really up to the members, because some members might be heavily focused on NFTs and they love that. They want to be in the Bored Ape community. And there's other people that say, well, I really like a classic car. Maybe I'm a huge James Bond fan, so I want a DB5. I wouldn't be able to afford it, but I want that. So the community can make up its own alternative investment strategies, and I think that's the beauty of it. You have this hive mind that is a DAO that's coming together and saying, listen, I want to participate in this particular investment, and then have the ability to back out if they don't feel inclined to invest in another particular investment. Like I know for some people, trading cards are huge. It's a huge market for them. However, it's not something I would prefer. So it would be something, if I were to invest in the project and an acquisition came about where it was a trading card, what have you, they could choose to actually back out of that investment as the project gets a little bit more mature.
So, I mean, it seems like we all agree that DAOs cannot be fully decentralized, but we are at a crypto conference and we're all crypto people. So I actually want to ask you, Gil, as a computer scientist, what does that have to do with crypto now? Because then we can just create a Discord channel and do stuff.
Yeah.
What does crypto have to do with this?
Yeah, I mean, because at certain layer you have to have some proof of certain things. When I say hybrid model, I'm not saying they should be centralized, or you should have like some mechanisms that maybe you have like a permission DAO where you have some members, and then you have to get tokens that are that have a very entry bar to get to this DAO to get decision power. So it's another. I'm going to say it's a bit more decentralized, and then I mean you need blockchain because at certain level you need to prove that you have an asset, that you did a transaction, that you made a proposal, that you did an action, and people have the consensus on that. So that's the layer that helps us. Is an instrument, like is a tool that you can program governance models on it. So that's my point. But this is the on-chain part. You have like the off-chain part, and that's what I defend a lot. The idea that DAOs nowadays you have to integrate more with Web 2 tools. Like why not having a DAO integrated with GitHub, for example? That's basically what I'm trying to build in Grand Chairs. Or maybe with Discord, where you can have a discussion and then like a vote on there. So you need like an off-chain to get a consensus, to deliberate, let's put it this way, to deliberate, to discuss, but then certain actions should be placed in the blockchain to have the proof and to move forward with the execution of the decisions that this community had. So yeah, we need it. We need it. Don't be scared, guys. Like I mean, we need blockchain. So it's
The first thing that I do, so me and a few colleagues developed a Web3 community canvas, kind of like the business canvas that's popularly used. And one of the first questions we ask people is, you want to start a community, great. Why does it need to be decentralized? First question. And if you can't give us a reason as to why, except for the ideology of like, well, we want it to be fair, and we want it to be equitable, and we want it to be, democratic, and no. What are those things going to do to help you create the change that you're seeking to make? And if you don't have a good answer for that, don't start. Don't do it. You're going to waste a lot of time and probably go to jail. I'm just kidding. But you get a lot of risk. I mean, if you're going through all the schlep of trying to make this work. So right now, there needs to be a lot of experimentation in this space to understand what kinds of jobs are DAOs specifically good at executing and what aren't. We haven't even asked that question yet.
So you're telling that some will go to jail, but someone has to experiment. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, we have to experiment, guys. So I just want to ask because, I mean, here in the audience, I don't know how many ever interact with a DAO. Like, is there anyone that interact with a DAO here? Like, yeah, I see some hands. Yeah, because this is another question. I mean, sorry hijacking, but what I see is that a lot of people these days talk about DAOs and even criticize, but you don't experience. So I mean, try to get to the community, you know? Try to do like us here. I'm not saying that everyone is a risk taker and should be a risk taker, but at least should experiment at certain level to get your own opinions, and maybe you have some ideas on make a proposal in this DAO or changing ecosystem. So that's my advice, you know, to the audience here.
However,
Whoa. However,
majority of the DAOs that you go to, you go through a relatively complicated verification process. You kind of understand what they're doing, but you're not really sure. You maybe get a welcome message saying, hey, welcome to the thing. We're doing this thing over here. Like, okay, cool. And then what? How do you know where to go to create a proposal?
yeah.
Where is the thing that's telling me this is how I can contribute to the community in a meaningful way? 90% of DAOs don't have that. Because the majority of the conversation happening on Twitter is now, just start a DAO. All you need is Discord, you need Snapshot, you need a bunch of people to come into your community, make sure you're using NFTs. That's how you can start your DAO. Just sell a bunch of NFTs, make the treasury happen. Oh, and then you need a Gnosis safe, or Gnosis safe, I don't know how you pronounce that, to make sure that we can manage the thing. Mm-hmm. And then, what are you supposed to do with that as a contributor?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's
They're just not informative enough. You need to detail every step because you have to imagine crypto, and I don't know if there's anybody here who doesn't have a MetaMask or some variation of a crypto wallet, but there is a barrier to entry into this game. So to make it any easier on people, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and add as many detail specifics as if you were talking to a child, because in the end of the day, if we're going to onboard anybody, you have to make it as simple as possible for somebody who might have not even invested in Ethereum or Bitcoin or crypto before. And that's how we kind of streamline this onboarding process and global adoption, is just make everything as simple as possible and just don't stop assuming that people know how things operate or if I want to claim a DAO token, I have to go to Uniswap. And people just simply don't understand that. So it's just keep it as simple as possible. Make it so someone who never invested in anything before can easily just sign up, go through the steps, and join your community, because I think that's definitely one of the biggest problems in the crypto space and mass adoption is simplicity.
And make sure that it's the right simple. Because sometimes you give them the wrong
Agreed.
simple, and then they go, and then they still don't know what to happen. Yes. So that's why I keep going back to the change that you're seeking to make. Give them the exact information that they need to make it as easy for them as possible to decide, this is the place for me. How do you want to get involved? Oh, I could do that. How do I do that? Oh, there's a really cool way for me to get involved. There's a community hours that I can go to. There's a proposal that I can read. There's something on Notion that I can get a hold of. So having strategic empathy with your members is so important to create a meaningful experience for those people. And we just haven't figured out how to do that at scale yet.
I mean, I really like this conversation, by the way, but I also specifically like your point of, at the end of the day, you have to make it as human as possible. Yes, you have your smart contracts, you have the blockchain, but a smart contract won't help me answer my questions, help me get involved. Who is that person who's telling me start here and then this is what you can do? So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation, but I also, since we don't have a lot of time left, and the name of the panel was also use cases of DAOs, and I understand we are in a kind of trial and error time right now. We try a lot of things. There's a lot of hype around DAOs. Everybody's like, oh, I'm starting a DAO, but like you said, it's like, and then what? So what are use cases or best practice cases that you know of right now, or that you can think of for the future?
Yes. So in terms of use case, let me answer you in terms of how we're going to start. So in my opinion, you should never go there and create things from scratch. Get the code, and I'm going to do my code by my own and from scratch, and that's it. First, fork a project, enhance it, check the standards of DAOs that are already there, and then start from there. Understand the current governance model that a DAO has, and then you extend. This is if you want to create a DAO for a specific use case. But I mean, there are many use cases for DAOs. I mean, there is the Constitution DAO, for example, that was a great experiment in the United States where they tried to bid in the Constitution or the regional Constitution. There's like the Ukrainian DAO, which is for donations. I mean, there are Moloch DAO in Ethereum also for grants and also public goods. There is like, for example, grant shares. We're building in NEO is also a grant-based DAO. There is one-of-one.works, which is basically a DAO composed of guilds where investors can add money, and then the DAO itself will acquire NFTs in the market, and each guild is responsible for art, collectibles, and music, games, etc. So, I mean, there are like many other DAOs. There's also Aragon, which is basically I will say a factory of DAOs in this space, and they have Aragon Court, which is an amazing project also. Yeah, I think you guys should check it out. But there are many use cases. I'm just saying that there are communities for a lot of things. So as the author said here, find your niche and experiment. That's my message.
I guess it's my cue. Use cases. There are use cases.
Yes.
The best ones have yet to be determined.
Absolutely.
And then that's why I say there needs to be a lot of experimentation. What we're doing with PubDAO is what we're seeking to do is what the change that we're seeking to create is to change the way that traditional media is done using Web3 infrastructure and tooling. What that looks like, we're still figuring it out. But we're having a lot of fun doing it, you know? And so use cases right now, getting very specific, even the ones that are very well known, you never know actually, until you're part of the core team, you don't know how well the thing is actually working, you know? There's one, they don't call themselves a DAO, which I highly respect. It's called DeepWork Studios. They're a service community that uses Web3 infrastructure to help incentivize and do payment structures. I think they have an incredible infrastructure in place that I would recommend anyone who's looking at figuring out infrastructure to go look at their website, DeepWork Studios. So different kinds of DAOs. There's the grant DAOs, there's service DAOs, there's investment DAOs. Yep. There's all these different kinds of DAOs, but we're still too early to really understand what the specific use cases are that's going to help drive forward motion in the space.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I agree, Brown. I think there are use cases. I think there's a use case for every single thing you could possibly be looking for.
Yep.
But I think the question is there a sustainable project? Is there one that has stood the tale of time? I mean, DAOs are in its infancy. So we've seen for-profit, non-for-profit. We've seen single-purpose, multi-purpose. We've seen investment, VCs transition into the space. And there's use cases for everything. Whatever you're looking for, it's there. Except it hasn't been developed enough. We haven't had DAOs enough in our timeline to know if they can sustain these particular use cases, or maybe it transitions into something much more specific. Maybe there is more of a centralized piece, and that's where the use cases, the most successful use cases, transition to. So I mean, whatever you're looking for, it's there, except will it sustain itself is the question.
Yeah, I'm really bullish on DAOs for the future use cases where DAOs will produce public goods, you know, for blockchains and for society tools.
Journalism.
Yeah, journalism, whatever. Like and the result is a public good for it. I'm really bullish. The problem is like again, I'm not going to go into it, but proof of participation, measure this, engagement, how to pay, and yeah, there's a lot of problems, but I'm really bullish on this use case.
Okay, I'm afraid we're running out of time. I want to circle back though and ask one last question that you all answer just yes and no, maybe one short sentence. Do you guys think that all countries and governments should be run like DAOs? Gil.
Difficult question. Challenging one. I think we should, as I said, I'm a pragmatic person. You start small. As I see, for example, why not a club, an association, can be a DAO? Or why not small companies can be DAOs? Like if you think about a government at this level, I have an unpopular opinion that we already live as a society in a DAO, as a government, but it's a DAO which the rules are not enforced somehow, and it takes a long time. It's a bit of an unpopular opinion, but short, it will come, but I think it's too early to think about this.
I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible, yet at least. Because for a DAO to function well, there needs to be an alignment around mission and vision. And the unique abilities of DAOs is that they can draw in those people or cultivate them within the community. But with the governments and the country, people are born. Like it's like having members just being born into a DAO, and they have no choice. Like that's where they are. And so I think it's a nice notion. But unless there's like a DAO to rule all the DAOs, or something like that, where they figure out some decentralized DAO system, maybe that could potentially work. But for now, I don't see it being a thing.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think we've properly even used blockchain in most of our governance and voting in the real world. So if we haven't properly adopted that, I don't think we could really transition over to a DAO structure. That would be DAOs haven't even figured themselves out yet. To do that in governance would be a mess. I think if we could leverage blockchain a lot more than we're doing right now, we'll be much better off, and then we could have that conversation.
Though, imagine with Elon and his little brain thing integration, like we each had our
Neuralink?
wallets and Neuralink, yeah, we could like vote with our Neuralinks and it gets linked to the blockchain and call me Elon.
That would be nice.
It will come.
Yeah, if we call Elon, we're gonna ask about his whole Twitter rug pull.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys. This was really interesting. I wish we could talk more, but maybe we can do over lunch. So you guys, I guess this is the last panel, I don't know. But thank you so much for
Can we
coming.
get a round of applause for Anne?
Yeah, check.
Cheers. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.